Welcome to the Sunday Times Politics Weekly, where we explore the big political issues of the moment. I'm Mike Siluma, and thanks for joining us. The outbreak of cholera in Tshwane, which seems to have spread to some parts of the country, has again put the spotlight on the crisis in our local government sector, which has negatively impacted service delivery to citizens. Local government is often regarded as the coalface at which government delivers on citizens' basic needs. But what is the recourse for citizens when local government fails, as it is doing in much of our country today? To explore the issue that touches all of us, we joined on the Politics Weekly by Dr Sithembile Mbete, who is a lecturer in the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria and is an associate fellow at its Center for Governance Innovation, as well, of course, as Mr. Sandile Swana, who is a political analyst and governance expert.
You asked Mr. Ramaphosa to sit down first. I'm standing.
Now I warn you.
I need to put on my big girl panties and keep going.
You can't have two speakers standing at the same time.
Security services of the Republic of South Africa, you may intervene.
There's been several attempts on my life.
Lower that hand or Ukume.
The president is accused of serious crimes.
I know I'm going to become the president of this country.
You are going to be the president.
I am going to be the president
of South Africa.
Of South Africa. There's no confusion.
Of South Africa.
I will cancel race.
Corrupt people do not eat alone. They have a spider web.
I now suspend the proceedings. I now suspend the proceedings. I have warned you.
Welcome to the Politics Weekly. I would like to start with you, Dr. Mbete. Who should be blamed for the long-standing water problems in Hammanskraal, where the outbreak seems to have started? Is it local government? Is it province? Is it national? Is it none of the above?
It's all of them. All three of them should be blamed. South Africa, Chapter 3 of our Constitution speaks about cooperative governance. And it's this idea that the governance of South Africa is done across all three levels, so local, provincial, and national, and that these are distinctive, interdependent, and interrelated, and they're supposed to work with each other in order to govern, but also to deliver services. And in the case of water, this is one of those areas where the responsibility for managing water and for providing clean water is actually shared across all three levels, mainly in terms of the cleaning of the water with local government, and in providing kind of the clean water that should go to our taps, but also in terms of broader water management issues and the resources that are provided for that. The National Treasury and the Department of Water Affairs at a national level are also responsible for that. And what we've seen here is a failure across all three levels of government to do their jobs effectively. We know that with the Rooiwal water treatment works, that is the one that provides is supposed to provide clean water to Hammanskraal. The master plan for the expansion of that facility and the maintenance of it was done in 2004 and has not been implemented, which has eventually led to the situation where we have 17 people dying and losing their lives unnecessarily.
Okay. I'd like us, you've just very broadly explained to us who's responsible for what, in this whole saga. I'd like us to come back to that later, as to what has been said during the week by, among others, the Deputy Minister of Water Affairs. But for now, Mr. Swana, I'd like to ask you, this week it's Hammanskraal. Recently it was eMalahleni, where a young boy was shot and killed in a service delivery protest. Why are local authorities failing in their primary task, which seems to be a straightforward task, really?
Thank you so much. And I also must greet my fellow panelist, Dr. Mbete. Let me say this. For instance, if we are here in Gauteng, we have a municipality that started with nothing. I think they had, I can't remember, it was 100 rand or something in the bank when they were started, mid-far. They had absolutely nothing. And became, before our eyes, the best performing municipality in Gauteng. Its neighbor which had more resources on day one when Midvaal started, Mfuleni and so on, became a total catastrophe, an example of failure. So under the same laws, the same country, there are certain types of mayors, certain types of leaders and councillors and MMs who flourish and become exemplary using the same laws. Within walking distance into the next door municipality, there is total disaster. Now, when you ask me why are municipalities failing, we must also admit there are municipalities where when you get there, you just smell fresh air and success. The ones that are failing as part of a broader process that has been developing since the 1990s and accelerated after the Bulelani conference of the ANC, where people are elected to be mayors and councillors and others are deployed into various positions within the municipality who exhibit at least three qualities. One quality being incompetence, the second quality being dishonesty and corruption, the third quality being a culture of non-performance, those three. You say the task is easy, so it is clear, solutions are known, the problem is well defined, the solution is known, all the resources are there to implement the solution, but the solution never gets implemented, whether it's at Eskom, whether it's at Mfuleni municipality, even when the sewage is going in the wrong direction. When you flush the toilet, the sewage comes into the house rather than going out. So the only problem that we're dealing with here is the HR problem. It's the human resources of wrong councillors being appointed by political party bosses and their factions. So that is where your problem comes from. You can blame the laws, you can blame every other thing. When you've selected and appointed the most cruel and dark-hearted people, this is what you get.
So you think that it is largely about who we put in charge of these local authorities?
Of the local authorities, also of their bosses in terms of the Department of Local Government. Let me give you an illustration. From 2007 to 2021, I was a lecturer at Wits School of Governance and Wits Business School, specifically focusing on municipal governance and municipal finance and all that, for 14 years. And the focus of our teaching was on helping people who are appointed to municipalities to meet the minimum competency requirements. From when we started until today, for all practical purposes, those minimum competency requirements were never implemented. Never. So all the people we taught, there was no benefit because the ones who are in the wrong positions who don't qualify are not removed to put the ones who are qualified. So it means the bosses, the higher ups at Treasury, the higher ups at COCTA, the higher ups in the presidency are not interested in the improvement of government. They are there for other reasons.
Dr. Mbete, I'd like to go back one step to your very broad and detailed introduction as to the responsibility of the different layers of government. Now, this week, the Deputy Minister of Water Affairs, David Mahlobo, blamed the Tshwane Council for refusing assistance from his department and for ignoring directives. And then now he says that they are taking the council to court. Isn't it farcical that different levels of the same government are taking each other to court? An ordinary person might not understand why that would happen. That practically this is the same government. This is our state taking one arm of the state to court. To
court, and it is different arms of the state that clearly are unable to use the judicial mechanisms that are there in terms of how they interact and how they cooperate and how they resolve disputes, they aren't able to use all of those mechanisms that exist in the system, and so they keep needing to take each other to court. And to be quite honest, so at the moment, I think that there is, because the city of Tshwane is currently under or being governed in a coalition with the DA mayor, and the national government and the provincial government are obviously under the ANC. But even in 2013, when when Tshwane municipality was being run by an ANC member, an ANC mayor, our current Minister of Electricity, Jose Ramohopa, you had the same kinds of challenges in terms of the National Department of Water Affairs at the time not working and not being happy with what was being done by the municipality of Tshwane at the time, and actually declaring the wastewater plant and the river that it was pouring sewage into a disaster area. And there were all sorts of things that were meant to have been done in terms of the extension of the plant and refurbishment that was meant to have been completed by 2015, and it was never done. And I think this goes to something that Mr. Swana was speaking about. And I think that what the crisis is that we have is that there is no consequence management in our government at any of the levels. And there doesn't seem to be any one who takes responsibility for making sure the right people are in the right positions to do the jobs that they are supposed to do, and then are held accountable if they don't do those jobs. I've been looking in preparation for the conversation we were having today, that we're having right now, for the names of who actually runs this plant, right? So we talk often about the politicians, but who are the engineers that are actually working on this? Who runs the plant? Are those people still in their jobs? How long have they been in their jobs? What disciplinary action have they faced for not doing the work that they're supposed to do? Who are the people that work in the government departments or in the municipal departments that are responsible for overseeing and making sure that things have been done? It's so difficult, to get that information, but also once you do have the information, it becomes very clear that the usual kind of consequence management processes that any of us would face in our jobs, if you were supposed to do something and you didn't do that thing, don't seem to exist in many of our governance institutions. And so things can go without being done. So maintenance goes without being done. The building that's supposed to happen, there's a whole situation in 2020 where there were refurbishments happening on the wastewater treatment plant, and then there were delays because of COVID-19 and lockdowns, and then nobody seems to have followed up on that work actually being completed. And so the kinds of consequences that people ordinarily face in employment don't seem to be applying to the politicians and the civil servants that are meant to be delivering services.
Mrs. Swana, Dr. Mbete is referring is raising the issue of consequence management, essentially for in this case, for the technocrats, the operators, who run these institutions and these operations. But can we have someone might say, why must the politicians escape consequences for their decisions or non-decisions? Can we get to a point where there are clear and comprehensive consequences for politicians? Or do they just walk away from the wreckage, innocently, and then be redeployed somewhere else?
There is a problem of consequence management at a political level. It's clear, there's no doubt about it. As an example, very recently in KZN, the MEC for sport resigned. Shortly after, I think a lot of journalists were already aware that there's a scandal in any event, although the politicians said that the scandal emanated after she resigned. And then when the NWC of the ANC went there, I think somehow there was a general agreement that the whole cabinet must take collective responsibility for that scandal and not pinpoint any particular person. The scandal of Life Esidimeni, as an example, has been a bioscope, a movie, for a very, very long time. Qedani Mahlangu went overseas to study. Now, they are still trying, even now, to get some accountability. You would have heard that if a person does something wrong in a listed multi-billion company, if you are the CEO, you do something wrong, over the next 90 days, they are going to get rid of you. Now, that is not happening in the public sector. Cyril Ramaphosa himself, when he took over power from Jacob Zuma, he said he's going to appoint to set up new performance contracts for his ministers. We have not received a credible report of performance since Cyril Ramaphosa about the ministers. For instance, during times of a cabinet reshuffle, that this minister scored 5 out of 10, this one 4 out of 10, that one 7 out of 10. Therefore, these ones are getting promoted, these ones are removed from the cabinet, etc., etc. Performance is never a consideration. It's never a consideration. Ramukhopa himself, as Dr. Mbete pointed out, was a failure in Pretoria, in the city of Tshwane, before being promoted to the presidency and then subsequently being promoted to the Minister of Electricity. The biggest job in South Africa right now is being given to a failure. So our management of human resources at the highest level of leadership in South Africa is using a very dark science. Literally, it's something that is beyond fathoming, that you can never understand what it is that is being trying to be done other than to arrange for continuous failure.
Hey, Dr. Mbete, just to change tack a bit. Now, I'm a citizen of either Hammanskraal or any of the many places where service delivery is failing. What is my recourse? For example, if I lived in Hammanskraal, 17 people have died. Maybe one of my relatives, is one of the people who have died, because of what has happened there. What is my recourse really as a citizen? I know people can say you can sue government, you can do, but I mean from a political point of view as a citizen of South Africa who participates in the electoral system every time I do my duty, I vote, but actually my life is actually going backward. Can our system give citizens a greater recourse in something like this, in situations like this?
Well, in a democracy, right, the primary tool of accountability that citizens have is their vote, right? That you vote somebody in, they don't do what you wanted them to do, or they fail you, and then you're able to vote them out. Now, that tool of accountability is only powerful if the politicians that are being elected take it seriously. And unfortunately, we are in a position where our political leaders, and it seems across parties, aren't actually scared of using their tools, their accountability tool of the vote, and aren't actually scared or don't seem to care very much about what citizens think of them. And unfortunately, for democracy to work, it needs to be based on this unspoken social contract, right? That says that we agree to be accountable to you and we care as politicians about what you think of us and about what you think of our performance. And at the moment, we don't have that in South Africa, which is why. So when you asked me earlier, what's consequence management for politicians, it can only come from two places. One, from the voters who vote them out, or in a political party, that political parties are meant to hold their own accountable. And so in a party, if you have failed to deliver something as a party representative in government, you shouldn't be promoted into a better position or to be, moved into to be on the party list again later. But we know that that's not the case in our system. That political parties keep people and they promote people and they reward people who have failed in governance. And who've stolen from the government, who've been corrupt, those people are rewarded over and over again. And it's something that's really dysfunctional in our system. We know that the citizens of Hammanskraal, and over the years, over nearly 18 years now, have used all the tools. They've protested, they've organized themselves into civil society organizations. They've linked with bigger civil society organizations in order to, try to use the courts, in order to use other means to be able to get, in order to be heard by their leaders. But you can be as active as you want as a citizen. If the people with the power to do what needs to be done don't do that thing, if they are unresponsive, there's very little recourse actually that you have, which is also why we then all turn to the courts. Because as you say, really at this stage, it seems that the only recourse that the families of those 17 people have is to sue the state. But, so we've become this very litigious society. We're turning into Americans, where we sue each other for everything. And it's because the existing mechanisms of governance that should work aren't working because the politicians and the civil servants just don't take them seriously. I wish I had a more enthusiastic thing to say, more optimistic.
Yeah, no.
But this is the situation where we are.
Yeah, but then which brings me to my next point, and I was going to ask Mr. Swana. I've heard people talk about the power of recall, that voters need to have the power of recall. Because if I vote you, I vote Mr. Swana into a position this year, and they've got a 5-year term. And in that, by the third year, it's obvious to everyone that they are actually causing serious harm to me and to our society and to the economy, etc. Why should I not be able to recall that person somehow? Use my power to say, look, I trusted this person, I elected them, but I can't wait for 5 years because the damage will be too far gone. Why can't we have that kind of exit route for voters?
Thank you so much. You must be aware that the power of recall was, to most of us anyway, dramatically demonstrated with the recall of President Thabo Mbeki. So the idea of recall, and then it was repeated again with Jacob Zuma, then we will see if it will be done with Cyril Ramaphosa. So the idea of recall does exist in South Africa. But the recall is actually in the hands of political party bosses and dominant factions within those political parties at the moment. We need reform. We need reform of the electoral system, the constituency system, to include a situation where at least 75% of the representatives, whether it's in council, provincial government, and national government, that every single area, to be sincere, has got a proper and clear direct representative who is elected, and where the power of recall lies actually with the electorate of that area. So the community can organize itself to recall a person, even if the party bosses don't want that person to be recalled. The second one that I have experienced in my area where I live is that you can actually have a ward councillor who is performing very badly and also corruptly, who is actually, and I live in a DA ward, I'm sorry to point this out, who is protected by two things: protected by the party bosses and also protected by sectarian interests. In other words, within society, South African society is very divided. There are certain people who are voting for the DA and the Freedom Front Plus on the basis of fear that the ANC and the EFF must not take over. So regardless of how useless the person is, as long as it is somebody who can protect white privilege, for instance, that person will remain there regardless of how useless and abusive they are. So a person can be protected by party bosses and the party bosses, in the sense that our representatives don't have to be even properly qualified as long as they are in the party list and the party bosses are willing to protect them. Secondly, citizens who are protecting racial interests can actually protect a useless councillor, and we are not able to remove them. And lastly, therefore, we need a direct representation where communities, even members of them, can mobilize themselves and have a proper channel to set up a recall process without the political party bosses.
Dr. Mbete, I'd like for you, before we get to the end of our conversation, in times of crisis, we all start looking for someone to blame or something to blame. Now, I've heard, and I think you're familiar because you've studied issues of electoral systems, quite deeply. I've heard often people, saying that, look, the problem is with the Constitution, in this case, I've heard people saying that this idea of autonomous layers of government, that you have Pretoria, you have got the local authority in Tshwane, you've got province, and often when there's a problem, there's a lot of finger pointing and the blame game that arises. National will say it's local will say, well, it's national, and etc. etc. Should we be re-looking? Because I'm thinking, if, in this case, the Tshwane local authorities are not doing what they're supposed to do, National asks them to do something, they decide not to do it, it means that a lot of time elapses and a lot of damage happens. People die in the process while National is trying to go to Parliament. Some people have said maybe our system, maybe we're not ready for our system, actually, the way it's constructed. What would you say to that?
Well, look, the reason why our system was constructed the way that it was, right? And because of the way in which the country had been divided under apartheid, and the different people who were involved in designing the system and the different interests that needed to be balanced. Now, two things to remember is, firstly, that South Africa is a very large country. And so governing the country entirely from the center is incredibly difficult to do because it is so big. And so you will obviously need to have smaller units. Now, the question here is whether you have those smaller units that are involved in doing the governing at a local level be extensions of the national government, or whether they should be, as they currently are, sort of semi-autonomous units that are elected in their own, that are elected with their own powers and with their own ability to generate income. I think that whichever way the system was structured, right, there's a big conversation also around the provinces. And in this case, around the water and Hammanskraal, it really is around dynamics between national and local. But of course, the provincial government and provincial entities like Rand Water, for example, are also implicated in what's happened in Hammanskraal. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that the issue here isn't so much around how things are structured. It is about the conduct and the accountability of the people that are operating in those structures. Because the mechanisms are there for there to be a sharing of resources, for there to be a sharing of expertise. It's just that the people who are responsible for this work at every level of government that they've been responsible for it just haven't done their jobs. You've just got people at many different levels who just don't do their work and get away with not doing their work. And I don't know that if we had a different system, so currently, let's say the issue was that, the Department of Water Affairs had complete control over what was going to happen at treatment water plants all over the country. Would the people that were appointed in those positions be doing their jobs? And we see what happens at national level. There's a lot of people working in national departments that don't do the work that they're supposed to do. So the issue, and there's no easy fix with this, because we're dealing with a much more fundamental issue of political culture, of work ethic and work practice, and what people are allowed to get away with. And I don't know how what I do know is that there's no easy way to fix that. And what I don't know is how we start, and I hope that we're having the conversation around people just not doing what it is that they're supposed to do, even when the resources are there. So there was a big issue in Hammanskraal around this, where there weren't sufficient resources being invested, and then resources were being invested into capex and sort of building new, extending the structure, and not enough was being put into maintenance. And then there was maintenance that was happening, but not enough of the extension. And then there was neither of them. Something that we haven't spoken about here that I think is important and that we mustn't neglect is the role of the private sector contractors. Because the people that are actually doing the fixing and that are supposed to be doing the maintenance and that are supposed to be doing the building aren't government employees. It's companies that are contracted by government to do work and also haven't done the work, and raises the question about why isn't government holding those people accountable? If those people have been corrupt, if they've gotten those contracts corruptly, why are they not being prosecuted and held to the account for that? Because it's criminal what they've done, and so why aren't they being held accountable through criminal matter? Through the criminal justice system, but also how is it that somebody gets a contract to do work and then just gets left with no follow-up? There's no inspection, there's no daily or weekly reporting, and there's something very, very, very dysfunctional and crooked between the way in which business interests and our government operate with each other, that actually is allowing private businesses to get away with murder, literally.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Swana, the last word will go to you off the back of what Dr. Mbete is mentioning now, the role, the use of private businesses or private contractors for what ordinarily would have been government functions to perform. Doesn't that actually give rise to the whole problem of corruption that we have?
Not necessarily in that way. You must remember that every company, let's take Checkers, Pick n Pay, Sasol, or Bidvest, any big company out there, they've got a procurement department. I mean, the things that Checkers sells in their shops, when you go there, they get them from different suppliers all over the world. So that doesn't on its own cause procurement. Sasol will tell you the same thing. Anglo American will tell you the same thing. Where the problem starts, and Kgalema Motlanthe captured this thing so brilliantly when he was the Secretary General of the ANC, that every project that is conceived in the state at this juncture, and that was probably around 2007 when he said this, is conceived because some comrade somewhere need to make money. So even something that was being done by the municipality will be outsourced so that the comrades will make money. So even within the private sector, those people who just want to do the job and not put in any extra money or cut for the comrades and so on are not even appointed. So the people who are appointed are the ones that are not going to do the job. Let me just say something in addition to what Dr. Mbete was saying here. I have been in municipalities where the budget, just for inspections, because there are inspection wells all over the water reticulation system, where the budget is cut. So samples are not being taken in the required way to ensure water quality is there. I think for a very long time, since 2007, we've been working on water losses, unaccountable water, all sorts of things. Those reports are there. Nobody is paying any attention to those reports. So I don't know what to say more than thank you.
Well, that's where we will wrap it up on the Sunday Times Politics Weekly this week with my guests, whom I thank very much for their time. Dr Sithembile Mbete, who's a lecturer in the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria and is also an associate fellow at its Center for Governance Innovation, as well, of course, as Sandile Swana, who's a political analyst and governance expert. We really appreciate your time for coming on to the Sunday Times Politics Weekly. I'm Mike Siluma. Until next time, do stay safe, stay blessed, and let's do good for our country.